Well, as I mentioned, the Trump administration is looking to privatize parts of our infrastructure in order to save money and get some things fixed. But can private companies succeed where government has failed? Joining me now, it's Michigan Congressman and outspoken lover of liberty. It's Congressman Justin Amash. How are you, sir?
Hey, Kennedy. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing great.
Good. Thanks for coming back. Let's talk a little bit about the budget. I know the Lindsey Grahams and John McCains, as well as the de Blasios and Clintons of the world, are all up in arms and upset about the whole thing. Are there some bright spots for those who love freedom?
Sure, there are bright spots. I think that having Mick Mulvaney there helps because he's a fiscal hawk, a fiscal conservative, and we served with him in the House Liberty Caucus and the House Freedom Caucus, and I'm sure he's doing what he can to find those places where the federal government is overreaching. Yeah.
And one thing he talked about, which I think is a really important point, because when Bill de Blasio says that this budget is going to make children sick and they're going to die because presumably it doesn't spend enough money on social programs, doesn't that also do a great disservice to future generations? Children now who will have to pay for the kind of out-of-control government spending that's implicit in a bill that is supposedly pretty trim around the edges?
Yeah, there's a lot of hyperbole out there, and the real problem going forward is that we're making the next generation pay for the things that we want today.
Yeah.
And that's not the way the framers designed our system of government. The states are supposed to be handling more, and the private sector is supposed to handle more, and the federal government is supposed to have a rather limited role. And we're way past what the framers intended.
Yeah, and you get to some of that when you look through the budget and you see some of the programs, particularly to the Departments of Commerce, Education, and the EPA, where certain redundant programs are thrown out. But I want to talk about privatization a little bit because, you know, when we talk about $1 trillion in infrastructure spending, we can't afford that. You know, we can't afford to borrow that much money, and you certainly can't afford to tax people anymore to fund those projects. So don't they, in essence, have to be privatized? And how do you go about doing that?
Well, some of it has to be privatized. We can sell federal assets, but at the end of the day...
Do you like that idea? I mean, do you like the idea of selling things like rest stops and airports?
It depends on what the assets are, but yeah, there's a lot that the federal government could be selling to either the private sector or could lead to the state governments to handle. We certainly have too much going on at the federal level, but it really depends on the details, and I'd like to see what's proposed. But when it comes to $1 trillion of infrastructure spending, I think there's likely a lot of stuff in there that conservatives and libertarians are not going to like.
Yeah, I agree.
That we're going to find wasteful. That doesn't mean that the federal government doesn't have some role in infrastructure, but it sounds like a massive overreach, and I don't want to be taxing people for that stuff.
Yeah, and when the big sell is, but Chuck Schumer will like it, that tends to be more problematic for me. I want to talk to you a little bit about health care, because you have done a very good job handling some of these town halls that have gone hours long, where some of your colleagues have been eaten alive. People like Mark Meadows have been exasperated. They have tried to explain things. So what is the secret to explaining health care that is so confusing? People who are writing the legislation have no idea what it means.
I think it's a matter of being calm when you explain it, when you're at a town hall. It's about having respectful conversations with people. But the truth is that most of my colleagues did not know what the bill did before we voted on it. They went back to their districts and didn't know how to explain it, yes or no, for why they were for it or against it. Yeah. And that's why there were a lot of false statements out there from both sides of the aisle, and it took leadership a while to figure out, even, I think, for them to figure out what the bill actually did.